We all know autumn is coming, but even so, often the oversized pumpkins in the farmers' markets and the sudden need for a trench coat feel like a surprise. Each year is a reminder to embrace change as the earth spins on its axis and nature responds. But I always relish this particular in-between moment as the green leaves still cling to the towering plane trees, Virginia creepers begin to turn flame red, and the quinces ripen in my garden, inspiring stints in the kitchen cooking up condiments. It's also a time of abundant sartorial expression with rich layers and textures. I love watching outerwear creep back into the streetscape. In Paris this week, where a cold snap has taken hold, conker brown cashmere coats, slate grey flannel and elegant umbrellas were on display as buyers and fashion journalists ran from show to show. And so this episode of Konfekt Korner is something of an homage to autumn style. We gather in Zürich for dips in the lake and a discussion on the fall wardrobe with designer Noële Nana Schaffner from the sumptuous Swiss brand Nomadissem. Our correspondent sends her report on Ukrainian Fashion Week, a reflection on the creative resilience of a nation at war. We'll hear the esoteric sounds of Portuguese musician Ana Lua Caiano, and we reflect on the power of small talk in an audio essay on navigating the room and life and embracing the poetry of everyday conversation. I'm your host, Sophie Grove, and this is Konfekt Korner.
Each collection really builds on the previous collection, so our clients can really add each season new pieces instead of having to buy a new wardrobe every season. So it's a more conscious approach to consumption, but also kind of being able to treasure those items for years to come.
Before we had recordings, I can not even imagine what transformations went through the traditional Portuguese music. So I think it's normal nowadays, if you have electronical devices, if you have computers, it's normal for the music to develop and to go somewhere else.
Think of everyone as interesting. They might not seem like your cup of tea at first, but everyone has a story, an inner life and things to say. Be open to that possibility.
Welcome to Konfekt Korner. I'm your host, Sophie Grove, and this month we're coming to you from Zurich. I'm joined in our Swiss studio by our style director, Marcella Palick, and also by markets editor for luxury, Brenda Tui. Hello to you both.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
As listeners will know, we like to start the show with a little show and tell. Marcella, let's begin with you this month. What do you have for us?
I was recently in the Vallée des Joux. It's the valley in the Jura Mountains, about 1 hour's drive north of Geneva. And it borders to one of the largest forests in Europe, which stretches all the way to France. It's actually a paradise for hikers, and there is nobody around. It's heaven. And the hamlet of Le Brassus is home to the ultra-modern Hôtel des Horlogers. It's owned by the local watch manufacturer Audemars Piguet. There is just an amazing restaurant, an excellent restaurant. The rooms are just pleasant and has a gorgeous view. It's tranquility. It's heaven for urban creatures like me. And of course, as it's Audemars Piguet, the neighboring watch museum of the luxury brand. And it's an experience even for watch newbies, I must say. It's really something amazing. I'm planning to go there with my father. But first, when I tasted the regional Gruyère cheese from the local laiterie, which seems to be from the 50s, it's really amazing. It's very confect-like. I decided to come back earlier because this cheese is just heaven.
Absolutely lovely. I feel like I'd be heading straight there myself.
Yes. And what about you, Brenda?
I found myself last week a little chilly at Regent's Park Open Air Theatre, ready to see the latest version of Fiddler on the Roof, which I have to say was magical and enchanting in this setting, with the wind whistling through the trees and nightfall upon us. The characters on the stage were incredible. The staging was amazing. They had a tufted roof with a lone fiddler on top, and at various stages, the characters slid down another grassy bank onto the stage. As we know, the original Fiddler on the Roof was written by Joseph Stein, and it was turned into a film in the 1970s. I have seen up-teen versions of it in London over the years. I mean, glorious music, wonderful songs, and very poignant too. But this, I have to say, was the best. Out in the open, with the wind in the trees, and the chill of an autumn evening upon us.
Well, we certainly need our autumn style notes for that outing. London has been alive with Design Week. It was just great to be out and about. They had open studios as well. But I went over to the design district to meet the CEO of Poltronafrau, which is this amazing leather company designing the most beautiful chairs and furniture. It was just a really great moment to talk to Nicola Corpulus about this Faye Too Good chair, which they've just introduced, which is called the squash chair. And I really love Faye's work, and there was quite a lot of it around in London last week. And I felt that she sort of defines London style and design at the moment with its kind of irreverence and those funny, wonderful names. The squash, she's really known for her roly-poly chair, which has become a kind of classic. But she did this installation in the store, which is inspired by English folk, which felt so whimsical and so amazing. But it was in leather, made by Poltronafrau. You know, it was very sort of totemic, and it had these panels, wonderful shapes in leather, and all these wonderful colours and tones of burgundy and blue. And I just thought it was really nice to reflect on folk and interpret it in that way as an installation. And quite brave of an Italian design brand to go off and do that. And we spent quite a lot of time lounging around in the squash chairs too. Known for her ethereal, colourful cocktail dresses, Ukrainian designer Nadia Deshak headed to Kiev last month to join scores of other creators for Ukrainian Fashion Week, the first iteration of the event since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. She spoke to Konfekt's Julia Lessica about the solidarity among the design community, the power of fashion, and what it has come to mean for her nation in a time of war. Julia started by asking Nadia about how she feels being back in the capital during Fashion Week.
For me, it's like our mission to use our work to raise awareness about the situation in Ukraine, to share our stories, and to show our rich culture and our heritage. For me, it is a way to show that despite the war, we are strong and we are unbroken. Participating in Ukrainian Fashion Week this year, especially I want to say that it is the first Fashion Week since the full-scale invasion. It is very important for our team, for our industry, and it is not just fashion event. For us, it's a platform to express, to show our fight, really, because we have a lot of talented designers, and we really want our industry to develop.
Yeah, and I think the talented designers is so true, because there's just such like a flowering of talent. I mean, you're just one of so many designers whose work is just so wonderful to look at and so important, I think, for the like development of design worldwide. Can you tell me about what it means for the fashion community as well? Are you making links that perhaps you might not have made if you were doing these fashion weeks dispersed around the world? What does it mean to come back all together as a community as well?
For us, it's about staying strong, about supporting each other, about demonstrating the world that Ukrainian fashion continue to create, continue to show amazing pieces, and believe in our victory. And I was surprised that designers support each other. Now all designers look like one team, all brands, and that is a very important thing. For example, if we don't have electricity in our studio, we can go to another designer in our studio and use their production. It's unbelievable. It's really very important for fashion industry, for fashion community. For us, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like a hope, because all collections now that you will see on the show are sewn to the sounds of sirens, to the sound of rockets, without electricity, with the help of generators. And I think we are really very talented, very unbreakable. Ukrainians are a unique nation, really.
Definitely. And can you tell us also about what it means specifically to be in Ukraine? lots of designers now are going back to authentic Ukrainian folk costumes, or they're looking back into Ukraine's 20th century past and beyond, looking at artists, writers, poets. Is there something, and I was looking at your designs and they're so beautiful there. I think the word you used was ethereal to describe them. There's something very sort of magical about them, and the ruffles are absolutely gorgeous. But then the colours there are really beautiful as well, specifically maybe with the collection that you're showing now in Kyiv, but also generally. Has your work been influenced specifically by being rooted in Ukraine, in this country?
For me, very important to stay in Ukraine. And my team, my studio, my production, everything in Ukraine, everything in Dnipro. It's my native city. Unfortunately, now it's 150 kilometers from the line. But it's very important to create everything in Ukraine, to feel this, because everything, it's our native team, native city, native Kyiv, native Ukrainian Fashion Week, native journalist. In this new collection, like in our previous spring-summer, we continue to explore the art of Ukrainian native artist Polina Rayko, whose home museum was destroyed after the Kakhovska Dam was blown by Russians. And yes, the collection is very bright, very optimistic, because it's about our hope. And also a new collection about unique natural beauty and culture heritage of Ukraine. We are focusing in pink lakes of southern Ukraine and the Kinburn Spit. Now, unfortunately, this region currently under the Russian occupation. But we want to say to the world about this. And we want to speak to the world in the language of our creativity, to show our culture, to show our heritage, even when it is a risk of being lost to war.
Thank you. That really means so much. And finally, I guess one question that is interesting is, obviously you're in a country at war and there are soldiers, fighting on the front line, protecting your existence, and clothes have taken on such a different meaning. I guess when you walk through the streets of Kyiv or any other Ukrainian city, town or village, you'll see someone in camouflage. Can you tell us about what clothes mean now for Ukrainians? I was talking recently to someone who was talking about them being like a shield, a way of protecting yourself, mentally, keeping up your mood. What do clothes mean for you now as a designer?
When we come back to our work 2 years ago, I thought that no one needs our transparent cocktail dresses. But now I know that our clothes, our transparent Nadia Zak classic ruffle dresses, I know that they give amazing emotions, they give optimism, they give hope, they give optimistic vibes. And I know that our clothes make people happier, and it's our mission.
Fashion designer Nadia Dishak there in conversation with Konfekt's Julia Lessica at the Ukrainian Fashion Week in Kyiv. As the season changes, so do our wardrobes. This is a time of year where the colourful tones of summer are replaced by the earthy, warm palette that autumn brings. It gives room to fine-knit cardigans, snug jumpers and versatile denim. But as crisp mornings sometimes turn into warmer afternoons, it can be challenging to remain stylish and cosy at the same time. Enter Nomadissem, the elegant women's wear label redefining the sector. Designed in Switzerland and handcrafted in northern Italy, the brand has sustainability and proximities to its suppliers at its core, centering itself on the power of strong hero pieces and a modular wardrobe that is versatile and can be adapted to any situation or season. I'm delighted to say that Noële Nana Schaffner, the creative director and founder of Nomadissem, joins us now in our studio in Zürich. Hello, Noële, and welcome to Konfekt Korner.
Hi, Sophie. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure being here.
I can't tell you how many times we have lusted over the pieces that come in for samples, and we've included so many pieces by your label in Konfekt. And also when you walked through the door, we all just ran towards your amazing coat and started pouring at it. I wondered, what's your own approach to that transitional moment where it's still a little bit kind of bright like it is today, but then also you need to have that warmth. it sends everyone, even the most seasoned fashionista, into a bit of a spin.
What is important is that you always keep some sort of layering in mind, especially with this sort of weather. So I think it's important that you feel warm in the morning, but you have the option to kind of peel yourself off during the course of the day. So I always go for like a great piece of outerwear as this one today, and that is kind of keeping you really warm. And then underneath I wear something like this matching denim set where I feel comfortable when the temperatures are rising.
In terms of your brand having a capsule, kind of this amazing sense of, being these key pieces that you can build your wardrobe, do you think that gives people more freedom and also liberates them from that sense of panic when the seasons do change and everything kind of goes up in the air?
I think it gives you less to think, and that's something that I keep in mind with every collection, that I kind of want to make the life of the wearer as comfortable and easy as possible. And if you have this sort of capsule approach, it means you can kind of mix and match a lot of things. So you can just kind of throw something on in the morning and then kind of style it up and down during the course of the day, and depending on the temperature as well. So I think this capsule approach gives you a lot of freedom and comfort, because you can just kind of...
It's a jigsaw.
Yes,
of sorts.
Yes, sort of, yeah.
I really wanted to ask you about the history of the brand. When did you come to this project and why? What's the vision behind Nomadissem?
So I have a background in business management and marketing, and but I always had this sort of passion for luxury and craftsmanship, and I always wanted to have my own company at one point, but I didn't want to build something that has no meaning and purpose. So I had it always in the back of my mind, and as I was traveling a lot myself, I kind of noticed that I sort of always packed too many things, and in the end I was always missing what I needed, although I had a lot of things with me. So out of this kind of grew the idea of a wardrobe where you can basically just throw a couple of items in your suitcase and you arrive at your destination, and somehow everything kind of mixes and matches. So when I came up with that idea, I quit everything and I moved to New York and studied fashion design at Parsons, because for me it was really important to kind of understand the making and the process and what needs to go into a good design and the comfort of the wearer. And then right after Parsons, I founded Nomadissem in 2018, and then it took quite a while to kind of build the whole supply chain, because I really want to make sure I have the highest quality in the market and I have the best suppliers, and I have really a sustainable and conscious supply chain. So I launched the first collection in 2020. So it's been now like 4 years, 10 collections, and it's really, each collection really builds on the previous collection. So our clients can really add each season new pieces instead of having to buy a new wardrobe every season. So it's a more conscious approach to consumption, but also kind of being able to treasure those items for years to come. And with the design process, with the colors, with the materials, that you can really, investment pieces that you can treasure for years to come, if not generations, if you want to pass it on.
Brenda, would you like to answer the question?
I love the idea of a hero piece. I really do. I'm wondering if it acts as a piece of armor for the wearer or something else. I would imagine that it certainly instills confidence in the wearer.
Yes, but my approach is, I think, comfort. For me, it's almost like comfort is at the forefront, because if you feel comfortable, you feel confident. So I always try to, let's say we were discussing the blazers beforehand. I never like to wear blazers because I think I found them always very restricting. So with Nomadissem's blazer, it's really sort of like a blazer you can almost go to the gym with, because it just lets you move around, just in terms of cut, but also in terms of material. So I think feeling comfortable, you're much more confident. And of course, it's sort of, if you feel confident, you have some sort of, like a shield, a little bit like an armor, but like a beautiful armor.
I love the idea of beautiful armour. And I should say we're kind of twins because Konfekt was also launched in 2020. We're on a parallel trajectory.
I was on the first issue of Konfekt.
So there, exactly. Yeah. And here we are now.
With a cocktail dress, with like a cigarette trousers and the tunic from silver blue brocade. Exactly, it was amazing. Yes, it's true.
This is Marcella's photographic memory coming into play. But what drew you to the brand initially as a style director?
To be honest, her press send out, because Noële is a perfectionist in each single thing she's doing. So when she's sending her lookbook, her amazing lookbook, absolutely perfect, she's sending also samples of the fabrics, of the amazing fabrics she's using. Like she said before, she has Loro Piana, she has an amazing wool, baby alpaca, and you touch it and you think, wow, I want to see this collection. And as the showroom is here in Zürich, so I went there, and then you see everything, and it's perfection. Yeah, it's small collections, but beautiful, minimal, and like I said, the materials are amazing.
And how important is that texture, that quality, and how did you discover, I mean, obviously we know Loro Piana, but how did you discover your suppliers, your artisans? I know they're in northern Italy, but give us a little insight.
So, as Marcella was saying about the materials, the base of each collection is really the materials. So from the beginning, it was really the most important element is the material, because if the material is right, you can create something long-lasting and something beautiful. In terms of suppliers, I haven't had any contacts in the fashion industry. So it was challenging in the beginning because you have to find the right people that believe in your vision and in your maybe obsession with details and perfection. It's a lot of recommendations. So you ask Loro Piana, fabric division, someone that is really good in this, someone that is really good in that, and somehow through that you kind of start to establish your supply chain. But then I think it's very much the connection that you are able to get or not get with your suppliers, especially with the manufacturers. So I was very lucky to finding this company that is run by a lady that is obsessed with perfection, absolutely obsessed. And she can seriously sit with you for maybe 40 minutes to just kind of figure out how to do a certain seam so it's perfect. So I think it's really important to find people that believe in your vision and in your idea and kind of support it throughout and stick with you throughout the process.
And tell us, you are shortly to be in Harrods in London, which is very exciting, and congratulations. Tell us about your plans for winter and for the rest of autumn, because I think it's a really wonderful moment for the brand.
Yeah, so we're very excited being at Harrods because we have a very exclusive distribution strategy, and it's also very much in line with our clientele because it is a very high-end offering. So our clients appreciate the fact that this is not super widely distributed, but very exclusive and specific. So it's kind of accessible to a very specific group of consumers. So we started now international expansion with Harrods and are looking to expand now further in Italy and then hopefully at one point also to the US and Asia. For autumn winter, in terms of styles, trends, I'm not really someone, I don't believe so much in trends because I think it has not so much of a long-term view. So I would more say tendencies and what I see for autumn winter, not just with Nomadissem, but also with the other brands. I think what we were discussing beforehand is a bit this kind of shielding that you can sort of maybe also in response to how the economy is with the wars, etc., that everyone kind of looks for something that is, comfortable and to a certain degree also kind of protective. So, for example, at Nomadissem, we have the Aspen coat, which is like a mohair, responsible mohair coat, which is like a very voluminous, beautiful piece that keeps you really warm, but also sort of you can snuggle in. So it's there's maybe a bit of protectionism for yourself and kind of shielding you while always look.
I love that. And I think I mean, I've been slightly ridiculed by my colleagues for not liking puffer jackets or down. And I live a down rustle-free life, but at the same time, like there are moments where you need that real snuggle, that real warmth. Yeah. So that sounds like the solution. Yes. Certainly for me.
Yes. I think that down jackets are, I think it's a very easy option. So we have this Jackson puffer at Nomadissem, which is like a reversible sort of duvet jacket. So it's really, if you're somewhere, I don't know, on the plane, on the train, it's almost like a blanket. So for winter, it's a perfect option to, if you're a bit tired or if you're very cold, to kind of just snuggle in and feel comfortable.
Well, thank you so much, Noële, for coming into the studio and giving us your insights for autumn style. We'll hopefully have you back very soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great pleasure.
Now, there's a reason why a lot of folk music in Portugal and beyond is sung by a group. Ana Lua Caiano's music may sound avant-garde and minimal, but its cool aspect immediately points us to the past. All the female voices harmonising on her songs belong to her. It's a defamiliarising technique that makes tradition feel very contemporary and almost eerie. Her debut album, Vou Ficar Neste Quadrado, is inspired by representing the world around her and the people in it. Drawing from concrete music, revolutionary songs from the 1970s, and folklore, as well as the trip-hop of Portishead and the genre-bending music of Björk, it creates a hybrid mix that's hypnotic and captivating. Konfekt's deputy editor, Chiara Rumella, visited Ana Lua in Lisbon to find out about her influences, creative process and approach to propelling tradition into the future.
Ai, nunca toques nas paredes, não comas mais o que cai no chão. Deixa as chaves que perdeste no caminho, mas dá uma volta, estás muito tenso.
So I started to learn piano when I was 6 years old. I learned classical piano, I studied jazz, and very inspired by the traditional Portuguese music. I've listened since I was very young to Zeca Afonso, Fausto Bordalo Dias, so very traditional composers here in Portugal. When I started to compose, I started to mix a little bit of this more traditional part of music and then this more electronical and experimental that I started to discover from Björk, Portishead and Silver Apples or Anderson. So it was a little bit of a mixture between these two worlds.
When you think about your relationship with traditional music, do you think what you're doing is carrying it on or bringing it up to contemporary, or do you think that what you're doing is about preserving what was there in the past? What's your relationship with this tradition?
So I think the traditional Portuguese music and any kind of traditional music, it's always evolving. So before we had recordings, I can not even imagine what transformations went through the traditional Portuguese music. So I think it's normal nowadays, if you have electronical devices, if you have computers, it's normal for the music to develop and to go somewhere else. So I think that I kind of continue to develop this kind of music.
What about your classical and jazz music background? How does that feed into your compositions?
So I don't think the influences of classical and jazz music are not very direct in my music, but I think that classical music brought me a lot of discipline. When you study classical piano, you have to work a lot and you have to be very organized to learn everything. And nowadays I play synthesizer, and of course I could play without a previous studies in piano, but I think that really helps me be very comfortable. And sometimes a lot of guitar melodies are flute melodies that are in my music. All of them appear through the piano, so I think that piano continues to be one of my main expressions. And I think the jazz school brought me, I think, more ability to compose, because in the jazz music you have to learn how to improvise, and improvise is kind of a composing in real time. So I think it gave me a lot of different ideas, and also you learn a lot of different scales and tonalities that I wasn't used to. So I think this kind of way classical music and jazz music continue to be present in my work.
One of the things that I find very interesting about your music is also your use of found noises, almost things that you record around town in your daily life, noises just like the ones that are in the background right now. What attracted you to this type of composition? Why do you find noises so fascinating?
I think it's amazing because when you have a musical instrument, for example a drum, you have limited sounds that you can take from that instrument, even if you start trying to discover new sounds, scratch on the instrument, etc. But when you try to search sounds in our daily life, you can find so many sounds that are so different and so rich. So when you work with traditional instruments, you have these limited kind of sounds. But if you open to all the sounds, you have unlimited instruments. So it's like to see all the sounds as musical instruments.
What about inspiration? Because you have so many different influences running into your music, does the noise come first and the music come second? Do you hear something on the street and think, oh, that would make for some wonderful addition to a song? Or does the melody come first? How does your creativity happen, and where does inspiration come from?
So on a daily basis, I'm always hearing what is around me, and when I find a very interesting noise, I record it. Once I recorded, for example, I don't know how to say, but a trash buzz, I don't know the name, it made like a very squeaky noise, I don't know how to describe, very intense, but it made like two notes, and I was, okay, I have to record this, and I used it in a song. So I think in a daily life I'm always attentive and always searching for these sounds, but I think other part of the composition is to compose melodies, and that is a part that requires silence. It's not something that I do every day, it's something that appears more naturally and when I'm not expecting it. So it's those two kinds of things have very different rhythms. One, I can always record them, and the melodies and the ideas are more unexpected.
Your lyrics in some ways also use found conversations and things that you overhear around. Can you talk to us about what goes into the words that end up accompanying your melodies?
Yeah, I think my lyrics are a little bit reflect of our reality, so I'm always very attentive to conversations, to news, so everything can be an inspiration. So my songs reflect issues like toxic love, mental illness, overwork, routine. So there's a lot of themes that come from this society, and nowadays in Portugal we have a lot of habitation crisis as well. So my songs really reflect what is happening and some of the worries that I listen to around me.
In terms of the inspirations from traditional music, there's a real kind of choral aspect to it. How important do you think is evoking the sense of community, the sense of history in what you do? And where are these references coming from?
I think that traditional Portuguese music, it's about performing in a group. In the south part we have Canta Lentejano, that is performed by a group of men singing. On the north you have groups of only women singing and playing a duf, that is a traditional instrument. So in my songs I really love to use different harmonies and create a sensation of a choir, but in my songs I have the same of creating like a B sound. So in some songs it's only me performing and making all the voices, because it makes a very specific sonority, because it's very strange to have only one voice doing several harmonies. It's very different from having different voices making. So it depends on the song, but either way I love to have this big and great amount of voices and superpositions.
There are many people around Europe who seem to have rediscovered an appreciation for folk music. Where do you think this style is evolving towards? And are there people around Europe that you respect? And what kind of approach do you think they're taking to this discipline? And how does it align with what you're doing?
I think it's very interesting to see that the traditional music is evolving to a new thing. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think that traditional music is always evolving. It doesn't need to be stuck in time. I don't think that's the aim of music. So I think it's amazing to see these projects emerging and playing with the traditional and folk music and adding new things. Rodrigo Cuevas, for example, in Spain is very interesting. Mariner Lope as well. Stromae has a little bit of that as well nowadays, so I really love this evolution.
Ana Lua Caiano there in conversation with Konfekt's deputy editor Chiara Romella in Lisbon. And you can read the full interview in the autumn issue of Konfekt magazine, which is out now. Some people find it effortless, while others dread it. But making time to engage with everyone from the bus driver to the person sitting next to you at dinner can be life-enhancing. For this month's final thought, the journalist and former diplomat Elna Nikanen Andersson muses on the art of small talk and leaves some tips to ensure you'll never be lost for words.
My husband is a master of small talk. On any cab journey, elevator ride or flight, or at a parents' evening at school, he'll happily be talking to people he has never met before. He enjoys a conversation with anybody, regardless of their profession, gender, age or the topic, be it caste, politics, finance, travel, fashion or holiday plans. Me, on the other hand, you'll find me hiding behind a book or seeking refuge in a pair of headphones. I'm the quintessential Finnish stereotype who dreads interactions with strangers. I was raised in a culture that believes in speaking only when you have something to say, where people wait with their ear pressed against the door before they leave the apartment to ensure that a neighbor isn't leaving at the same time. Silence isn't uncomfortable, it's my preferred state. But science is on my husband's side. Over the years, plenty of research has listed the many benefits of small talk. Chatting as you go about your business has been proven to make you happier and healthier. It promotes learning and expands people's worldviews. Just smiling or nodding to a fellow human induces a small surge of joy. Productivity increases when people engage in idle conversation at work. Research from Harvard Business School suggests that the more varied the groups of people that you talk to are, the better. Relational diversity in your social portfolio, as the researchers put it, is strongly linked to well-being. These interactions increase our sense of belonging. This is also important at times of crisis. Over the past few years, as the security situation in Europe has worsened, experts in Sweden have pointed out the importance of knowing your neighbors. According to Veronica Strand of Umeå University's Political Science Department, a strong community can save lives in a crisis, be it a natural disaster or an armed conflict. Despite my inclination towards avoiding contacts with strangers, deep inside, I've always known that the researchers are right. When I've stepped outside my comfort zone and initiated a conversation, it has always paid off. There was a time when I started talking to a taxi driver on the way home from Stockholm Arlanda Airport and got to hear the life story of a man who had fled from Iran to Sweden, spoke 5 languages, and was saving up to buy a shop. Small talk is like social vitamins. It might be as simple as an enthusiastic hello to a neighbor or a quick wave to the postman. I've also noticed the warm feeling inside when I compliment someone on their outfit, greet a bus driver and get a smile back, or thank the children's teacher for a good school year. When I became a diplomat, I worked as Finland's press and culture representative in Sweden between 2019 and 2024. I had to turn into a small talk professional. Receptions, conferences and other events are a big part of the job, and being there without speaking to anybody won't do your country any good. Trying to make new contacts and turning them into fruitful relationships, on the other hand, can prove very important in international relations. Plus, a 3-hour dinner in silence really is quite uncomfortable. So, from a shy fly turned social butterfly, here are my tips for anyone for whom small talk doesn't come naturally. 1. Do some research. At high-level dinners, guests are often briefed beforehand on the interests and backgrounds of the people sitting close to them. Do they like to bake or fish? Do they have children, and if so, how old? That way, we all have some topics for conversation. 2. Don't be afraid that someone won't like you. Fear of failure often keeps us from approaching others. What if they don't want to talk or find us boring? This is almost never the case. But if it is, find a new person. Have confidence. 3. Start with related topics. Often there'll be something at the event you can start with. What brings them there? How do they know the host? Or have a few questions to fall back on. How was their weekend? What are they working on at the moment? 4. Show interest. Don't just talk about yourself. Ask about them. Listen carefully and respond to what they're saying. 5. Be personal. If you want to take the conversation to a deeper level, you must dare to be personal. Perhaps tell the other person something about your childhood or your culture. In turn, many people like to talk about themselves and their roots, and often there will be some common experiences. 6. Tell a story. It's always good to have a few fun and engaging stories in store and tell them with gusto. Doing so will often spark similar impulses in the others, and soon the whole table will be sharing stories. 7. Think of everyone as interesting. They might not seem like your cup of tea at first, but everyone has a story, an inner life and things to say. Be open to that possibility. When it's time to make an exit, it's good to have a strategy. This is where people often go wrong. Either they continue the conversation for too long, past its natural ending, or leave abruptly, accidentally offending the other person. Perhaps the worst exit line I have heard was, "This was interesting, but I have to go and pee." I have often been honest, saying, "It has been lovely to talk to you. If you'll excuse me, I'm gonna circle the room a little." Expert networkers will tell you the best way to maneuver away from a conversation that has run its course is to introduce another player and make a discreet exit. Then everyone is happy and the cogs and spokes of small talk keep turning.
That was the journalist and broadcaster and former diplomat Elna Nakanen Andersson. Marcella, you're Konfekt's very own social butterfly, but do you ever find it tricky maintaining the energy?
So when I have a cocktail invitation where small talk is asked, I try to drink my morning coffee in the afternoon, as too much caffeine is also not the solution.
I like it. I think that kind of momentum at a party can actually create more energy. Brenda, I've seen you working many a room. What's your secret?
Well, I have to say, I like nothing better than the challenge of entering a room full of absolute strangers, scanning the room to see who I might target first for a little fun conversation, a little back and forth. I do find it incredibly pleasurable. I really am interested by people and love to find out why they're here, what they're doing. I think it's immensely gratifying.
I think the idea that small talk is somehow, in itself, the label is problematic because everyone has something interesting to say. And in a sense, you're exploring human beings. But I think we just go to a surface level sometimes, especially at parties, and you can find yourself a bit weary because there isn't any real depth. So you have to try and kind of find what's interesting to you and explore it somehow.
And sometimes I think that you're actually doing an act of kindness, really. You know, it's a little bit of care in the community. You arrive at a party or at a dinner and you see someone who you can tell isn't comfortable, you know, is very uncomfortable in this situation. And really, it isn't a pure act of kindness.
Well, next time you surge towards me at a party, I'll know exactly why. It's because I'm probably looking kind of desperate. But I think it's really interesting. I take that approach sometimes. I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to go and speak to the people who look unloved and worried. Then other times I feel like, actually, I want to speak to that person. Or I feel like I'm just in this wonderful do-si-do folk dance. Probably we're talking about folk a lot, but it's like a kind of barn dance where you chat to people for a little bit, then you move on. You're meant to be moving. You're not meant to be talking to one person for 3 hours. But sometimes, I don't make the transition and I do speak to the same person. And then usually when we're seated for dinner, I will inevitably be next to that person for a further 2 hours. My problem is how to leave or how to kind of like move to the next person. What's your secret for that, Marcella? I've seen you seamlessly transition from one conversation to another. Cocktail parties.
Well, I think Elna's tip is very good. I present you to somebody else, but it can be an empty glass. And I will look for more champagne. Serving more of a drink is also a nice way.
And I also don't think you do need an excuse every second. People don't need to be told exactly where you're going. They can just be said, oh, see you in a minute. You know, people, I think they do feel guilty at parties and maybe we overthink it. What do you think, Brenda?
I do think that we overthink it. I mean, we're all grown-ups. Sometimes you talk to someone for 3 or 4 minutes or maybe 10 or 15 minutes, but then they're pretty fabulous. They need to move on.
In a way, she's very Finnish about it. She said, I just say to people, I'm going to speak to someone else now. I was like, I don't know how it feels. Someone said that to me. But at the same time, I think that's very open and honest and kind of like transparent. We've all come to circulate and not just meet one person. There's a little bit of kind of honesty that maybe could be applied to the formula of the cocktail party where people weren't quite as on edge and maybe it would be easier for us all.
And maybe an actual style of closure. Thank you so very much. It's been lovely to speak with you.
Yeah.
And on you go.
Because exiting is a real art. You know, even when you leave a party, do you say goodbye to the host or do you feel like you need to kind of slide off because that might interrupt and make them feel like things are winding down? And that's the kind of wonderful thing about hosting. If the party is being properly hosted, then the host will make sure everyone speaks to everyone and feel that you can just dip in and say goodbye and, you know, make your excuses. So this wonderful sense of etiquette, and it probably goes down generations and you observe your parents doing it or you find out about it somehow, probably the hard way. So I think her essay has so much more to discover. She could write round 2 in a few issues. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Konfekt Korner, coming to you from Zurich. My thanks to Marcella Palick and Brenda Tui for joining me this month. Konfekt Korner is produced and edited by Carlotta Ribello and Christy O'Grady. This episode had editing assistance by Steph Chungu, Lily Austin and David Stevens. We'll be back next month in London, but until then, from me, Sophie Grove, goodbye and thanks for listening.